We're live? Well, then, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I am Nerder Doug, and tonight I am unleashing the beast with this nerd.
Nerdarchist Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
Pretty terrific, as usual. I like Mondays. They're always a fresh start, and I hit the ground running, got a bunch of stuff done, and I get to talk to one of you guys about nerdy stuff and whoever's hanging out.
It is always a blast. I enjoy doing this as well. It's a scenario where, like, when you start talking about these kind of things, it's great to have these topics and say, okay, well, what does that mean for this game? How can we kind of do this? So, like, what was the first thing that jumped to your mind, when we brought up the concept of beasts as a topic?
I just said it a million times, but probably just that they're relatable. That was probably the first thing that came, like the first thing that popped to mind as far as like a talking point. And as our shadow partner noted in the chat, you got two videos today, Sargon, because we checked the wrong day on the calendar. Scheduled it. So you get two videos, two live chats. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And often, like, a lot of along that same line, like, I can think, we always have tons of memorable experiences in our D&D games, but, like, I can honestly say there's at least a handful of them involving just mundane beasts that, like, at lower levels are scary. I mean, when you really place yourself in that situation.
Yeah, I like them for so many reasons. Not only are they, summonable animals from spells, they're familiars. There's so many different aspects of,
they're just creatures living populating the background of worlds.
But there's also lore and interaction that you can get to play with. And then whenever you get to create your own world or enter into a world, you have the aspect of saying, okay, well, I can just use the things that you're used to, or I can totally go like Avatar Last Airbender type thing, and I'm going to create my own set of things that exist in this world.
Absolutely.
And to me, that's an aspect that I truly love. And like, every once in a while, like, you see these things where, like, oh, the crazy wizard did it. Well, like, what if it's not a crazy wizard? What if, like, this is a natural animal and it just happens to look like a combination between these two things?
I'm 100% on board. That was one of my bullet points as well. And it's like, it's a fine line in the sense of, like, well, another talking point bleeds into, but, like, any kind of codification things, there's other things that depend on it, like wild shape and all that. So you don't want to give them, like, too many, like, crazy abilities, but that doesn't mean, like, visually and, what they mean in the culture and the societies and to the world can be totally fantastic. I mean, I'm glad, like, the more D&D, especially in, like, 5th edition, has tried to, like, really kind of mold its own, like, it's not just quasi medieval fantasy, it's like really fantasy, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and, like, that's what Avatar's like too. It's like, yeah, there's recognizable things, but it's like, why would there be cows on whatever planet it was, or, you know what I mean? Like, of course there are gonna be different things, they just evolve differently, even though it's like a, an Earth-like environment.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's totally cool. And in that same analogy, it's like what those mean to, like, the people that live there and the things they use as, that they herd and domesticate. That can add a crap ton of, like, flavor to just even, like, a mundane, starting in a tavern, whatever. It's like, oh, instead of, like, a cat walking around, it's, like, this, like, purple striped, whatever, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I love that stuff, and to me, that's one of the things that I'm easily drawn to. I know for a while there was going around, someone had shared like the Griffin knockoff chart of, we're gonna mix some kind of vermin with some kind of avian.
What was it? Is that from something, or?
I know it was just a meme that was being shared.
Oh, okay, I got you. Sorry, I didn't get
that. And of course, I liking squirrels and what have you. Like, one of the things was, like, the squirrel jay it was a squirrel and a blue jay, and I'm like, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it would be a very simple stat block to make. Like, okay, it's got
Sure.
flying, it's got climbing, but it's like not anything more than just like a rat.
Yeah, beasts are pretty. I mean, talk about, people say like, oh, giants are kind of boring. It's like even the biggest beasts, they just do damage and got a lot of hit points because it's like, we said, well, I mean, druids can wild shape into them and people can summon them, and beastmasters can have them and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, hey, when your normal animals start like, oh yeah, and they can like shoot fireballs out of their mouth or whatever, it's like that's like a monstrosity. Okay.
Yeah. That's the thing that separates it. Does it have an ability? Now, monstrosities might be something that occur naturally,
Right.
But the differentiation between the beast and the monstrosity is abilities.
Yeah, right, for sure.
So like that's the thing that I think a lot of people really don't fathom, and that's why I think creature types are important. Not only from the standpoint of design, but from the standpoint of understanding, so that if you want to design or you want to look at the mechanics of it, that's why.
Or you just want to have like some kind of context of any sort, like some sort of box to start from.
Sure.
So like with beasts, it's like they're just the mundane creatures that exist in your world. Doesn't mean they have to be small or even like harmless or anything. And also, so in my little campaign setting that I sort of use usually for my games, I remember I looked into a lot of like Slovenian folklore and stuff because I'm Slovenian, so I was like, I'm curious. I didn't know anything about it, and I'm sure this is true of probably every culture on Earth. They have like stories about. They're not often about like monsters. They're about just like things that probably seem scary to people then, where there's like a bear or like a stag or a lion or whatever. So yeah, like one of the little mystery cool things in my setting is just like this whole myth base. What's the name of it? Gold horn, I think is the translation. It's just like like a stag with golden horns, and it would like lead like it was kind of like a parable or what do you call it? To teach a lesson sort of thing.
Okay,
I don't remember the exact story, but it was just like somebody entice this young man to go try to kill it and take its golden horns, and it like led to his tragic end and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I kind of like just work that in, and nobody's ever really explored that, the only time players ever did, like they heard the fair, the story, and they were like, oh, we should check that out, but they never did. So just still waiting in my campaign saying, but I had a kind of a stat block for it and stuff. It's just like a beefed up thing if people want to fight it and chase it and stuff.
Well, I mean that's always cool to have those things that are created. I mean, is the Dranther a monstrosity or a beast? Do you remember?
I think it's just a beast.
So I mean that's one of those things that's a Nerdarchy created thing in our fantastic mounts, which I absolutely love that stuff. And having things at some point in time, I need to do like an encounter with a herd of kangarams or something.
Yeah, we have a pretty cool, which I also think are beasts. I think a lot of those are. We went out of our way to make beasts. There's a pretty cool encounter. Dave came up with like this war band that rode kangarams on the website. I forget what it's called, but yeah, we have a Dranther in our game with Steven, right? And Puka, isn't that a Dranther that pulls our cart?
My note sheet is, I think, over there with things on it. But yeah, I mean, I love using our own stuff. It showcases how fun and interesting things are. We do have a question in the chat from Zargon. What is your favorite animal to wild shape into?
I really like druids, and I've played a couple. One was a spore druid, and I never wild shaped with him. And the other one was what's the one that has like the healing die? And they get the pool of healing die and stuff. It's like the druid circle.
I don't remember which one that is.
Yeah, I can't believe it. I'm just drawing a blank. It's not Circle of the Shepherd, is it? No.
It might be.
Well, whatever that one was, I was playing that. And that was really the only time I wild shaped as a druid. And I often just, he was kind of like scuzzy person, so I would just wild shape them like giant centipedes and things like that.
Sure.
But that being said, that was fun.
So for me, when it comes to wild shaping, number one, I look at things from several different aspects. One, what is the theme of the character? Because regardless of what aspect of Druid, what circle I'm in, there is still a general theme to it as well.
Yeah, you're like me. It's like even if something's like better choice, it's like, yeah, they wouldn't change into that though. You know what I mean? Are you kind of like that? It's like I'll pick the best thing that also fits the theme, but I wouldn't, like if I was a lizard man druid, I probably wouldn't turn into like a tiger.
Right.
Like, I'll do a giant lizard or something.
Right. Now, for the last druid that I've actually played for a handful of sessions was a Circle of the Stars druid. And like, for whatever reason, owlbears were this character's focus. So I had a bag of tricks. So regardless of whatever stat block I pulled, when I pulled out a bag, it was either something avian, something bear, or just like a modified, it's a smaller one. I'm pulling out a baby owlbear. And then so like I would treat my wild shapes as the same. If I would wild shape into a bear, I was an owlbear. Like I still use the right stat block.
Yeah.
But visually that's what I did. And I've done that a number of times where, I might choose the better stat block, but that's what I'm going with. The fact that I'm playing a druid in Steven's game now, Circle of the Stone Gaze, which is one of our creations. I have not used wild shape yet, but he's very stone oriented. And there's not a whole lot of stone things that are beasts. So for this guy, he tends to have a more wolfen theme, as that is the thing about the pack. So that's one of those things of like, all right, that's where he goes to. And I would probably describe, he's got gray fur that's matted down almost to look like stone and whatever have you, but it's still going to use the appropriate stat block.
Owlbears are interesting. I mean, it's like I just don't get it. I mean, I like they're just beloved by so many people. I don't dislike them, but it's like it's just a bear with an owl head. I mean, it doesn't seem any more scary or cool to me than a regular bear. But I guess it's a unique D&D thing to kind of like hang your hat on.
I think that's the love. The things that are iconic D&D have a higher attachment level to it. I mean, I'm a person who likes animals. I like nature. We go to the zoo and the aquarium and that kind of stuff to actually, observe these things. And it's a lot of fun. But at the same time, like, all right, is it, do I want to be a bear or do I want to be an owl bear? Well, owl bear is a whole owl on top of bear. So why not?
And I guess to your point earlier, like in traditional D&D lore, that is like the crazy wizard did it. But there's no reason to just say in your world, it's like just a normal, I mean, they are beasts. So they are natural in that sense. Like, I get the sense of like, even in D&D sort of canon, it's like, that was how they started, but now they're just like a creature that proliferated. Right. It's just a beast. And, that really helps like sell the sizzle of fantasy too. I mean, like one of those memorable encounters I was talking about earlier was just like with a brown bear when we were like second levels just a few years ago. It's like, it's pretty scary. I mean, the DM did a good job of, selling it. They are big. I had just seen that Revenant movie not too long before that. So, I mean, it was already like, man, I mean, they're all pretty freaking big, dude. Like, and huge. And, like you're a second level guy. It's like, I mean, you can be as blustery as you want and think like mechanically, like, it's hard to die, and I got plate armor. It's like, it's still a freaking thing that's like 12 feet tall on its haunches with claws that are like bigger than your torso and stuff. So, and me, you play, and I think you're like this too, where it's like, I like to like put myself in that situation where it's like, look, even if I know mechanically, like, we're gonna smoke this thing, it's still scary, and I like, sort of like weave that into how I do things.
It really requires buy-in. How much are you going to look at this scenario? And yes, I think if you're decked out in plate armor with, a great sword, and there's a freaking bear, and you're trained how to properly wear the armor, move in the armor, how to wield the weapon that you've got, it still requires a little bit more to just stand up to that bear and say, I got this.
Yeah.
There's a mentality.
Yeah, because like the person doesn't know that how many hit points they have. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the character in the, thinking of it in their terms, it's like one hit, this thing could just literally tear my head off. Even if you as the player know, like that, there's no way.
Right. Yes. So like, that requires a bit of buy-in and a bit of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And
which is the fun for me. I mean, that's what I like about playing these games. So
a little bit of background knowledge on
sure.
Ted. Years ago, I've not hid this. I was heavily involved in Boy Scouts, or scouting as it's now called, when as a youth, and this was the summer of '95. I want to say I was hiking through the mountains of New Mexico.
Oh wow! Okay, cool.
Yeah, it was like a 10-day backpacking trek.
Wow,
it was an amazing experience. Well, there's one place, like one specific campsite that, as opposed to it just being your group, it's designed as like a stopover for people going through a variety of different trails. And instead of hiking that day, you do a whole bunch of cool activities, and it's kind of like one of your off days.
Okay.
And they have, as opposed to like the 10 people that you're with, it's like 50 to 100 people that are
wow.
there. So when you're used to only being with the same 10 people for 6 days, seeing that many all at once is like, oh, this is a bit weird.
Mm-hmm.
So they wind up doing group meals, and 2 people from the unit come and cook breakfast for all the whole crew, and from each unit, and same for breakfast, same for lunch, same for dinner. So I happen to be the dinner cook and what have you, and as everybody is kind of beginning to assemble, and I hear somebody like pull out a radio and mention that there's been a bear spotting, like in the camp area where we're at.
Okay, so like close.
So we wound up having 3 separate bears investigate our meal, because like you're talking about 100 people.
Sure, it's a lot of food.
That's a lot of food. That's a scent. Cooking meat tends to have a stronger smell, and that's going to be a little bit, dinner's going to be a lot more appealing to a carnivore. So it was definitely problematic, and like none of us were in any danger. Like nothing got close enough. There was no charge or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But like when the bear patrols, the guys coming with the backpack with the heavily powered rifle, coming in a group to kind of inspect the area and ward off the bears. It was like, oh, that's no joke.
Yeah.
So I've not been in any real danger from a wild animal, but that's probably the closest it's been.
I probably inadvertently and like naively have been many times. I remember when I moved to Austin, because I went, I just like walking around parks. I live in Northeast Ohio, where we have like really renowned park system, but there's no like bears or any of that kind of stuff in them. So, and I just was like, whatever, I'm go to the park like any other times. And, you're hiking along and it's like, oh, watch out. There's like mountain lions and, like rattlesnakes and bears. I mean, just not right there, but it's like, it's possible. Like just the fact that it's even possible, like when I go to the park here back, in Ohio where I live now, it's like, that's not even a possibility.
Right.
So I remember thinking like, oh yeah, I didn't even think of that. And the same thing happened when I went to California many years ago with my friends. We were camping in, what's it, like Big Bear area.
Okay.
Like up in the mountains there, and it's kind of like just deserty mountains. Like they're not, like snow-capped pine forests. Like it's just a big desert. And same thing, we were walking on. We're like, Yeah, there's probably like all kind of like, mountain. I mean, people get attacked in their backyard in California mountains. We're like in the mountains, like remote. So, that stuff's scary. And as a D&D nerd, I still think about that stuff today, but it's just like, even if you got like armor and spells and all that stuff, and you got and you're low level, I guess, especially when like those kind of beasts, I guess the only other beasts are like dinosaur level stuff, but like bears and wolves, where they're like still a serious danger. I'd say tier 1, maybe tier 2, even a little bit in numbers. It's like that can be like a fraught with danger, right? That's why like people in the it's not it's a cliche to like somebody just wants to hire a guard to get through the woods to get their stuff to the market or whatever, because it's like, hey, even if it's not a dragon, back wolves can easily take out like a farmer and his son in a cart, or whatever.
Having used the spell Summon Nature's Ally or whatever it's called in this one, and getting literally a pack of wolves and seeing the sheer amount of damage that can do, that's no joke.
Yeah, I almost like I've just like given up on that spell, like unless it's like a big pitch battle with a lot of stuff. But it's like somebody casts that with those, which is like just describe how you kill it, because it's like it's like you can roll all the dice if you want, but they're gonna hit. I mean, was there 8 of them? So even if like 3 hit, knock it down, and they all have advantage, it's like they're gonna tear it apart.
don't they get advantage anyway because of pack tactics?
Oh yeah.
So like 16 dice rolls. That's gonna do some damage.
Yeah, for sure.
But then also if they knock it down and it's somehow still alive.
Yep, and everybody else gets
the other people can get it in there too.
It's like Shaun of the Dead when they were in the bar and they just had like the camera in the middle showing all the people like whacking at the thing. Like that's not going anywhere. But along those same lines, like I said, dinosaurs are like big beasts, right? Like, that's kind of like the path to keeping mundane beasts at a higher tier level. It's like just make them giant. I mean, a wolf that's like huge size or something. That's pretty damn scary too. If there's a whole pack of them.
Oh god!
Even if they just had a lot of hit points and stuff, whatever, and and they did like, I don't know, whatever, another die of damage or something. It's like that's pretty damn scary.
Yeah, I mean,
chasing you through the woods.
There. I don't know if there's a stat block for it, but I actually have from WizKids. There's like an unpainted mini that's a wolf that is huge.
Yeah, I think dire wolves in like 3.5. They were. I know the sizes were different, but they were at least like the large equivalent, if not huge. Like, I remember some of the art was like, "Damn, those things are like as big as a tree and stuff."
The dire bears was
yeah,
like that thing was like, oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, as scary as a regular bear is, and again, we've said it so many times in chats and stuff. Like those sort of like little bits of relatability. It's like, okay, imagine like a grizzly bear. You've seen those. Now imagine it was like 5 times that size and it had like bony armored ridge over its skull. It's like, that's pretty damn scary, man.
So let me throw this concept out there.
Sure.
You're talking about dinosaurs, and we're talking about beasts, and we know that I used to do LARPing stuff.
Sure.
So always looking at, not wanting to mess with anybody else's copyright and what have you. And I was the head monster creator for our world or our team.
Yeah.
So rather than use the term dire to represent this is a bigger thing, we wanted to keep it in the same vein, a small word, 2-syllable tops.
Okay.
So we came up with the term Dyna, D-Y-N-A.
Okay.
And at first it was kind of like, oh, well, this is just supposed to mean it's bigger. But because Dyna sounds enough like dinosaur, everyone wound up like interpreting them as more like either reptilian or armored. What would you
mean even if they're like on top of whatever the base animal was?
Yes.
Oh, that's a pretty cool idea. I like that thematic. Like, where like all the beasts, it's like they're like the things and also reptilian.
So what would you feel about coming up with a Dino Wolf and a Dino Bear and
I think that's really cool.
Having some more larger options for those things, and they don't have to be full on dinosaurs to have as wild options and whatever have. But
I mean, even if it was like if it just had like they had the recognizable features of the animal, and then the other stuff's just like scaly or whatever. Yeah, I think that's a cool idea. Like I've said this several times, like never been a big dinosaur buff or anything, but like that Lost like Valley or Land of the Lost kind of thing, I think that sounds really cool. Like especially in a fantasy setting to me for some reason. Maybe that's why, because it's like it's a neat enough concept like on Earth, that we know, but it's like, but this is forgotten by people in a fantasy world. So it's going to have all those other like fantasy elements, and also it can kind of like, really enhance, the rest of the lore of the world. It's like, oh, that's a great DM tool, I guess is what I'm saying, where it's just like, man, you can like reveal all sorts of things if if that comes up like later in a campaign. They're like, oh, the things you knew about, the world that you knew are like totally wrong and stuff, and you can find out because it's like this is a land that time forgot. It's like, so things are still like they were back 10,000 years ago or whatever.
Right.
So like having the animal, and that kind of ties it all together too. It's like in the way we do things too, I can imagine it's like maybe the players would feel like, why are they all like that? Was there some reason? And it's like, well, maybe we hadn't thought of that ahead of time as the DM, but you're like, I don't know, but they seem to wonder, so let's go that direction. Like, so just presenting a lot of like unusual things, as we often advise. It's like, just go with it, because you never know what are going to pique players' curiosity. And you can't really say they're like derailing the campaign, because it's like they don't know what it was supposed to be. Maybe that was, if there's some cool element that they're interested in, how do they know it wasn't somehow woven in with the plot to begin with? So I would totally think that was a cool thing to like sort of introduce.
All right. So I've got a whole scenario of, well, sorry, let me restart that phrase. The campaign that Dave and I are the campaigns that Dave and I are both running in our home games are getting ready to wrap up before the end of the year.
Yeah.
So that could be something that, when we go into a whole new campaign arc, could be you
guys should swap like settings, or like whatever. So like you could run in his like the Council of Worms thing.
So I don't know what the players are interested in. I've got a handful of things that I'm cooking up as ideas. But we're swapping tables.
Okay. So you're already doing some swapping.
Yeah. So we play second, third Saturday of the month, and it's typically been a 5th edition game. Although the one this past Saturday I had run my game, and I brought this bad boy out to play.
Is that the one you're painting on the thing you were on?
No, this is Udak from the WizKids Critical Role line.
Okay. Did you painted that?
No, gods no. Is
that what it comes like?
Yep.
Udak. I thought that thing was gray.
It is. It's like gray and blue.
Is that the gray render thing from campaign 1? Is that what Udak is?
I think it might have been.
I remember that was like Laura or Vex like hunted it or something like that.
But it's a fun mini. We had one player out, and they set a picture in the group chat, and it's like he's like, oh my god, what WTF is that?
Yeah, that thing's cool looking. I like that shaggy fur all over it. Has it got 4 arms?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So it really fits with the too many limbs mentality of what the bad guy is, but they knew going.
I'm gonna tenuously bridge this to beasts.
All right. Well, let me finish the thought, and then we'll get there.
Okay, sorry.
But so like that one of the players in that group, I got on a tangent. I apologize. He had suggested,
no, go for it, man.
Do you wanna bust out Gamma World and because we've got the 4E edition rules.
That was like a box set, right? Didn't it come with like cards and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so like the box set is literally now on the table because people had asked about it. But so like I'm gaming with that group as a DM and Dave as a player, and then this upcoming Saturday, it's reversed, so it's a whole different group other than Dave and myself. So both campaigns should be wrapping up in November. So I'll then be switching to the DM seat for the third Saturday of the month, and he'll take the second Saturday.
Is that Gamma World? Does it come with like like an event starter adventure and stuff? Do that back then?
I don't know. I mean, it wasn't until 5th edition that I ever did anything more than a single session of somebody's, a pre-written adventure.
Yeah, I was just curious. I was thinking of it was just straight thought because I like that kind of stuff where it's like you could just bust that out on just on a game night or something. Because somebody had been out, right? Yeah.
Right.
Anyways, what was I gonna say?
You were gonna bridge it over back to Beast with something.
Yeah, but what was it? I don't remember now. Oh well.
I stole it.
Yeah, that's all right.
So let me ask you this question. Considering magic items and monsters are my, creation of choice.
Yeah.
What do you feel? Do you think there needs to be more magic items that are linked to beasts?
Yeah, I mean, why not? Actually, that was another one of my bullet points. Was like our own wealth of stuff about frogs, right? And I often joke about, because we have a post called like, they'd be the ultimate frog champion. And you get like the crow cloak and the, just all the frog helm, the shield, and all that stuff. But like that's what's cool about that stuff because like that could be, I don't want to say this. Like how many times do you ever think about like the frogs in your campaign setting, right? But they probably exist. They're popping around in puddles and whatever. But it's like, when you start, focusing on things like that, where it's like a, particular beast, it's like, they might become a really important and cool part to explore. It's like, you'd probably want to talk to them. And, I'm sure some of those magic games we have, it's like, you can speak to frogs and all that stuff. And, I just like that kind of stuff, as it's like all those little storytelling things that just emerge just because of like, whether it was a magic item, that you could speak to. All it did was like you could speak to frogs. It's like, well, suddenly you're going to want to know about frogs. Where are they? You're probably going to talk to them more. And I just think that's cool because it's like that's the uniqueness that makes the magic happen at your table.
I'm fond of items that allow for additional communication.
Yeah, real quick. Actually, I was just telling Tara, my girlfriend, the other day. We were talking. And we were saying like, just since we were little kids, I've always wished I could just talk to animals, like just to see, because it's like, well, I think they think, I think they're not just like totally instinctual beings. I like to think that animals have like some kind of intelligence, like our pets and stuff. I feel like they understand. So anyways, that was just real quick. I like the idea.
I would totally get a kick out of that.
Yeah. I mean, how awesome would that be?
Now, technically, I can talk to animals. They rarely respond back, but I talk to my cats. I talk to my daughter's guinea pigs.
True.
I talk to the squirrels when they're running away from me.
Me too.
But I'm gonna keep trying, and who knows? Maybe one day the universe will be like, "Oh, this dude's serious. Fine."
I suspect, in fact, that's probably why Druid is a very appealing class to a lot of players, especially new ones, because it's like, like I've introduced many people to D&D, and for some people it's like, oh yeah, it's cool to play like the, just like, I got skulls on my shoulders and a big axe. I'm just gonna slay things. But I think a lot of people, it's like that's not their go-to of like a fun time. It's like I want to kill stuff real good, But it's like, when you're like, oh yeah, this class can change into animals and speak to animals and they're all nature, and people are like, yeah, that sounds cool. Because it's like, who wouldn't want to do that in real life? I don't want to go kill things in real life. And it's like, I'm sure as hell wouldn't mind turning into animals and talking to them and all that stuff.
Well, I mean, this isn't Beast, but what was it? Henry Crabgrass?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who knew that was going to be a thing?
Yeah, right.
So, like, yeah, and those kind of things are ridiculous. And if you aren't catching my reference, that was a Critical Role thing where somebody used speak with plants to talk to a patch of crabgrass.
Some DMs hate that, like the players do that too much, and I mean, it's just like anything else. If people did it too much, it's like, okay, all right, you don't have to do it like 10 times a session, but it's like, it's fun. I mean, I always get a kick out of that kind of weird stuff when I'm the DM. It's like, sure, you're gonna talk to like a moss on the wall or like a rat that you saw in the sewer or whatever. It's like, okay, that sounds cool to me.
For me, I'm down for whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna
hear for first, folks, Ted's down for whatever.
Okay. Well, I mean, I do have my
I know.
my list, but
I'm just teasing.
If you want to add in conversation, with an NPC or a monster or an animal, I can usually make something happen. And as long as I've got a general idea of what the intelligence of said thing could be or should be, then I'm going to be good. And that's the one thing that's interesting about beasts is they typically have a low intelligence. So like they're not going to be able to speak with, verbose words.
Yeah, right.
They're not going to be able to remember a lot. But many of them could be wiser than people in your party. They pay attention and they're concerned for their safety.
And they kind of have a unique perspective. I mean, a different perspective than like a sentient humanoid would of the world. Like when they're asked questions, it's like, it's kind of fun as a DM to be like, what would a rat think about,
food?
Yeah, right. I mean, so like that's what he might recall. It's just like, oh yeah, they dropped some, something rations fell out of the pocket or whatever, of like somebody you're tracking through the sewers or whatever.
So like,
I remember what I was gonna say earlier that was tangentially related to beasts is another cool thing I like to do with druids is rather than wild shape, which I have played characters like this, is use our hit dice. It was so long ago I forgot, but one of the things is like Vixen from DC Comics, where it's like, well, you can use wild shape to just like take the attack of like a bear. So it's like your hands just get like a kind of a spectral claws around them and stuff. And I always got a kick out of that.
I would say like when you are the DM and you have to kind of role play for the animals, it really should come down to like, all right, what are their basic instincts, base needs? That's really what you have to look at. So if they don't feel threatened, are they hungry? Do they need anything for their shelter? Do they have young? Any of that kind of stuff. Like I tend to kind of have as my go-to. I don't have a whole lot of people cast and speak with animals in my games of recent.
No.
But I've definitely had my share of experience with
same here. Yeah, it doesn't happen all the time, but it's like it's happened. Or like you said earlier, I mean, just kind of like any of that sort of like unusual communication type stuff. So it's cool. I mean, and certainly the idea of like having animal like friends, allies, companions is hugely popular with players, myself included. I mean, that's an awesome kind of like concept and archetype. But just a bazillion, iterations too. I mean, whether it's like what bats or wolves or eagles or any of this. Oh, what about like from you mentioned Critical earlier that one shot where the Taliesin was playing the owl bear. It's like sort of taking that as like a whole character concept. I mean, and Batman too, but
right.
But in the context of like a D&D world, why not? I mean.
Well, that was the point I was going to go in of, beasts are evocative of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Look at how many superheroes are literally built off of animals and beasts that exist out in the real world.
Yeah.
Things that is like, oh well, the bats are the creatures of the night, and Wolverines fight with ferocity and what
Yeah.
have
There's a
you.
white tiger, and just tons of
Black
bronze
Panther.
tiger. What's that?
Black Panther.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's just no show. Even in D&D, I mean, I think there's something like 30 or something, or maybe 40 races right now, and a pretty good chunk of them are like just anthropomorphic animals. I mean, people love that stuff.
And we have more options coming with the latest Unearthed Arcana.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say earlier. I'm sure there's going to be a video coming soon, but I'm not in it, and it is out, and a lot of those are sort of animalistic. So I don't know if you're going to touch on that, but I thought that was pretty sweet stuff, except for the GIF. I was like,
yeah, I think the GIF was a letdown. I thought the GIF was a letdown.
Yeah.
Thri-kreen, there's no way to do the Thri-kreen properly to what it was like in Athos. But they got as close as they were gonna get. Well,
I think they had an ECL, if I don't recall, or if I recall it correct, right?
They did.
Yeah. For you new folks, that's effective character level. So like, just being a Thri-kreen would have meant you were like a second level character because they had so many.
Yeah, so you would play. You could join the second level game and you have one level of a class if you wanted to be a Thri-kreen.
Yeah.
And that's, if I remember correctly, it might have even been higher than one.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could like jump really far, and they had some psionic powers. They could make weapons.
They were crazy.
They kind of had like a lizard folky thing, right? Where they could make weapons.
Yeah, they create their own crystalline property.
Yeah, with their spit or something weird like that.
Nate can tell you everything about. That was his favorite race. Nate and I bonded, many decades ago over Athos and Dark Sun.
Oh yeah, it's such an immaculate setting. That's sort of similar to like you were saying about what is the world in Avatar called? I can't remember.
I don't remember.
I only remember the stuff was unobtainium. Which is stupid.
Oh, but anyways, Pandora.
Yeah. The Dark Sun was kind of like that too. I mean, granted, a lot of the beasts had psionic powers, but there wasn't just cats and dogs. And I mean, they might have had equivalents. But
you said Avatar, and because I had mentioned Avatar: The Last Airbender, I was thinking Avatar, not Pandora. Okay. The animals there, the beasts, are pretty flippin' incredible. And that would be something that.
Is that what you were talking about earlier? Earlier, you were talking about the Airbender.
Yeah, I was talking about Airbender. The things where everything is kind of combined together.
Is that like that? I've never watched that.
Oh yeah. There's everything is like an owl bear. Everything is like two animals together.
Where it'd be a great place to find a bunch of cool stuff like that for ideas. A couple of Magic sets ago, I think it was called Beasts of Ikoria or something, whatever.
Okay.
But there was a bunch of jaguar shark was an actual jaguar shark, or a porcuparrot and stuff like that. There was just the whole set was a bunch of fun.
Oh man, I'm every once in a while I've got that twinge of why did I leave this game? My wallet.
Play Arena, man. I say it all the time. I mean, they don't pay us or anything, but it's you can play for free. You win cards all the time. I mean, you can buy stuff if you want, but you get a ton of cards.
Right.
And and the best thing about it that I like, because I used to, I flopped cardboard for many years as well. It's you could just have a bazillion decks. You don't have to take your deck apart and put it back together, or if you want to where's all the cards that do blah blah blah. You could just find all those and stuff. It's
lightning otters. I need lightning otters.
Yeah, that's one of them.
All right. Well, it's not a beast, so I can't make a lightning otter for the newsletter, but lightning otters might become a thing for me.
That reminds me of the cover for Lost Lore 2, because it was all the animals with those elemental templates on them. Which, hey, if you want to take your beasts and give them a little zhuzh them up with some elemental powers, check it out. Lost Lore Volume 2 in directly the store. If you sign up for the newsletter, you get $9.99 store credits. So you just go get it for free.
Indeed. So I forgot to grab the book, but a interesting thing showed up today. So you can take the thing for just a minute while I run
no problem.
The room.
Yeah, I'll check. Let's see. There was a couple of things that came. Zaragon asked earlier, "Are we playing tomorrow night?" We are definitely playing tomorrow night. Well, as far as I know, unless anybody gets sick or anything. I am chugging mango lime kombucha tonight, which is a very tasty new flavor that I discovered recently. Let's see. Parks says, as a DM, when playing the animals, they try to take a human type intelligence, but tone down the logical thing. Yeah, that's what I do too. Unless I think of some funny thing that I can add in there, because I'm just silly and not too serious when I play games. So if I think of some funny way to portray an animal, I'll do it.
And Brian, I got some ideas for beasts you want us to kind of come up with. We got 15 minutes left. I'm more than happy.
Wow.
More than the challenge of
boy, this went by fast.
Working with whatever you got.
Sure.
Now I've got, in the mail today. This is only one of the.
Oh, you got the alternate cover and the regular one.
Yeah, the regular cover happens to be over there. I was
sure.
looking at it.
I like that alternate cover.
This is Fizban's Treasury of Dragons.
Nice.
So we will actually be sending a copy of Fizban's and Wild Beyond the Witchlight as next month's giveaway.
Ooh, man, that's an awesome combo right there. I really like that Witchlight.
The Witchlight book is good.
I like the whole adventure kit. I think that's a great. I like box sets, and like same as a Gamma World. It's like it just feels like it's almost like a standalone game in a sense, where it's like, hey, if you just want to dip your toe in D&D, like whether it's Phandelver or Icefire Peak or even like that, it just feels like more accessible to me. Like if you're getting into it with a whole group, just like here's all the stuff you need. Well, I guess they don't have the rules in there, but you can get the basic rules for free.
So we'll be doing some videos on Fizban's for sure. There's definitely a lot of cool things that are in there. Brian, more Beasts of Burden. You could always check out Fantastic Mounts. We've got some great Beasts of Burden in there.
One of the creatures from there that I like, because it also makes one of my favorite sorts of adventure type like environments more accessible, is those Bulbatid, which are like jellyfish sort of, but they're smart and they like can be reasoned with, and they'll aid people. And I think I haven't looked at it in a while, but I want to say I know they enable people to breathe underwater, and I want to say it's by sort of like going over your head like a diver's bell basically. But I just love aquatic adventures, and the art was really cool for those too. And I think they if there was a bunch of them gathered, they became like a greater entity or something like
that. The Bulbatids were a weird one for sure. I always forget about those. For me, it's pretty much I've got the Dranthers, I've got the Gantuan, I've got the Kangaram, and I think there was like a fifth one in there that I don't.
Yeah, there was a Water Strider, which are like beetles that could skim along the surface of water, and you could I think they did some other stuff. But I just love aquatic adventure, and that's like a whole literal other world of beasts too, because those are all beasts too, sharks and fish and squid, and I've had I'd probably say I've done more aquatic adventures than most people on average, because it's just fun. I often set things like at least near a shore, and I just I don't know, I like.
Well, if you want to go with aquatic and beasts, you've got to go with the octopus. The stories that we keep finding out about how the octopus is possibly even smarter than we are
they're fascinating.
I don't know if you've heard the story or well familiar with it, but the octopus that would literally found out how to get out of its cage, go over to the cage next to it, get a meal from the other fish that are there, and work its way back. And the only
Yeah, they're
reason they got
fascinating.
was because of security cameras. Like that's hysterical.
Yeah, so yeah, and the same with the air. We've talked a lot about like bears, wolves, and ground creatures and touched on other things. But beasts also, I mean, if for as mundane as they are, they can do a lot of things that people can't, like humanoids can't, like fly, survive the depths of, the water and all that stuff. So, I mean, they really sort of, encompass the whole spectrum. They can be everywhere and anywhere, like even at high levels.
So like you've got the ability to interact with them, to use them, to summon them throughout all levels of the game. Now, you know, late game, they're not going to be effective in combat. Like they
Sure.
might be there to just absorb some blows. But I mean, even a pack of wolves against a challenge, 15, 16, like they're going to have a hard time hitting the armor class that, they need to.
Mm-hmm.
And the damage they do is still not going to be all that high in comparison to something that might have hundreds of hit points.
Yeah,
But
those, I mean, at higher levels, like weak creatures like that, they just eat up actions and cover, But also, I was thinking a lot about this, even when we did our last newsletter, and we always are sort of like picking like little bits of like the rules to look at closer. And it's like, I mean, even in a big scale battle, if there's a bunch of bears or whatever, it's like they can provide cover for things, I mean, and there's no reason to think like a high tier, high CR druidic thing wouldn't just summon like 100 bears. Like what if they cast like, summon nature's or whatever it's called, conjure animals with like a 9th level slot, essentially. Like that'd be a lot. It'd be like 36 maybe bears or something like that. Flat.
it's bears have a higher CR, so like you're not going to get a huge
or whatever. I mean, if it was like 68 wolves all of a sudden around the bed, it's like that's gonna take up space and time, and something's gonna hit.
So Brian says, I just love imagining beasts and massive mundane animals, something super fantastical about just any animal if it stands 15 foot tall. Maybe giants have their own common beasts too.
That's a great point. It's not often probably looked at, right?
You've got elephants and mammoths. I know, and again, shout out the Whiz Kids. But there is in the Rime of the Frost Maiden, there is a giant riding a mammoth mini, and it is like it comes with pieces so that you can have the mammoth by itself and the giant standing by itself, but then you can take the piece off the mammoth, the feet off of the giant, and put a separate piece on the mammoth.
That's cool.
Riding. And
that's pretty cool.
In my Dawnbringers game, we actually just met that thing, and like as he's describing it, I'm like, I've got that mini. It's over there.
That's what they in Skyrim. There's giants just roaming around, and they sort of like herd mammoths. Because to that point, it's just like they would have to have like a source of food and stuff like that, and they're giant, so they'd have to have giant things. Which reminds me of one of the most memorable things I ever just in D&D period was when we played that Grung one shot, and there was like a random encounter in the jungle of like a giant ape fighting a giant crocodile. Like, and it was just meant to be like an environmental hazard, sort of like, because they were just little Grung, and these things are like 20 feet tall, battling it out. And they're like, well, like, if we touch them, like our poison will do stuff to them, right? And I was like, yeah, it would, and so they just spent the whole time like clinging to the sides of the ape and the crocodile, and like one of them had to like jump up and down on their turn. Another one like had to just like submerge itself in water, because it was like those random things in bolos or whatever for like what they wanted. I think because they had all kind of Grung. I just made up characters for them to play.
So Park says, I read a novel where they used a giant fleas as a mount. I thought that was a cool. Upsizing normal insects into beasts is semi-regular go-to for me anymore. I don't know how I would feel about giant-sized fleas.
That's gross.
I'm not fond of fleas in any way, shape, or form. But hey, giant insects, that can be cool. I mean, we've already seen the upside of the Ankeg and the ridiculousness of that. But
I'll do you one better. Smaller heroes. shrink them. So then you don't have to have giant insects. It's just, it's like all of a sudden you're tiny. And that wolf stat block, it looks a lot more dangerous now when you're like, 8 inches tall or whatever. I've done that a couple times in games, and that could be a lot of fun, when characters get like shrunk down.
I've thought about that. I mean, especially, after the guy was in the live chat today talking about like the mouse who eventually became Mouseling.
Okay.
I was like, well, what does it mean to try and play D&D, with wrong sized things? So like I started thinking, I didn't get to an answer, but how have you run, shrinking someone down?
It was in Just Quest 1, they shrunk down to gather escargot, like a special escargot for variety for a wedding they were catering, and it was using flail snails. And I don't remember exactly. I think I just had them, it was just like kind of like DM fiat that they had gotten shrunk down.
Okay, so you didn't alter them, and you used a stat block that you wanted to use.
Yeah, I didn't do anything mechanical,
okay.
But just through description and stuff like that.
Sure. And that is the easiest way to go about doing it. And that's what I wanted to kind of just make sure we talk about. So rather than trying to look at, how do you do this and how do you do that?
Yeah, I guess it would really nerf non-spellcasters if you made like their weapons do less and all that other stuff, but not because it's like, you really couldn't justify like their magic would do less that they're still doing the thing. Yeah.
So like I would look at, like I would have to do either multiplication or division as a whole cloth.
Yeah. Like you're just gonna do like everybody does like a 4th damage or something.
But I had to like, all right, I needed to just like throw it out, put it out with the bathwater. It's not it's not worth investigating. It's just, if you have this, then like you have to put a stat block that's an appropriate of ridiculous proportions. If it's like, you're this big and you're going up against a human. Dear God, what are you going to do? You're the size of its toe.
Yeah. I wonder what they would be like to face like quicklings if the characters were shrunk and you like mechanically figured out that, I don't know, because they're tiny, right?
Well, quicklings, the last stat block I saw, I thought they were small.
Oh, are they? Oh, okay. I thought they were tiny. Anyways, it's just a fun thing to explore. Just again, because it's like, if you can, it's a lot of DMing is about selling the sizzle to me. So it's just like, if you can get the players on board to buy into what you're selling and then do that, it's like, it can be a lot of fun, even if it's not like, you don't have to like work out all the mechanics of making it harder and everything. It's like players can kind of like subtly, unconsciously do that themselves. If you, if you kind of have the right group and you do it and you sell it right.
100%.
Like we were saying about a bear, it's like they might just approach it different because of the way you've described it.
So we're getting down to the last
few
minutes. Anything that you need to hit on your list? Anything we need to kind of pitch and talk about?
Well, I'll mention that our Patreon rewards are changing up a little bit. It's on the if you're our Patreon, you already saw that on the post from the October rewards. But we're sort of like mashing up 2 things that we love together, like peanut butter and chocolate, and our CBGs and our monthly content for them, because people just like those CBGs and we like making them, and it's fun to do the character guides and the creatures, and we're sort of gonna like take it a few steps further and then build a out of the box style encounter around that creature with some maps and all that other stuff, and package that all up, and that'll be our Patreon rewards. You'll still get the character guide and the creature version will still be paid, which you want on DM scale. We'll still do the videos just like we always did, except we're taking it further and developing it further, and we're really excited about it, and we hope everybody is too. And next November will be our first, it's kind of like a hybrid, it's bridging the gap, so that'll be our first foray into that. And then after that, who knows? I think we're going to do 2 a month is what we're aiming for.
Yeah,
so that their rewards will have 2 encounters, 2 new creatures, probably some, whatever else, magic items, feats, skills, subclasses.
So we'll add in the player content that you're used to seeing already. Just whatever we feel like kind of adding whatever fits with the themes that we're working on. We're always creating stuff, here behind the scenes. So it's fun way to try out new things, and hopefully you guys and gals out there are as excited as we are to kind of go through this alteration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just kind of like, why don't we take these 2 fun things that people like and mash them together? So I'm excited about that.
Indeed. So I would say, there's a lot of fun things that beasts are there. Brad says, beasts as totem animals, are beasts as totem animals, dinosaurs are beasts in D&D. So why don't we have more totem dinos for barbarians? I think that could be an absolute thing. I know Doug says he's not a big dino guy, but I absolutely am. So
I am now. I've become I'm a late convert to dino.
Okay,
I'm on board.
So I would love having more dinosaur stat blocks. I would love having more dinosaur related classes and open up more of those options of the dinosaurian themed characters to have fun with.
For sure.
But we have reached 9 o'clock. It is that dreaded time where we get to push the button and say goodbye. So as always, go ahead and follow us and do all those cool things. If you're not a Patreon supporter, highly recommend checking that out. I mean, you can get a free sample of what it is that we do. You can go over to the website, sign up for the newsletter, which is how you get access to our giveaways and the chance to game with us. So
there's actually a free bundle in the store of just a bunch of Patreon stuff that we just like. Here's a free sample. I think it's just called Patreon bundle.
And if that's that's something that you like the stuff that we're putting out there, that's a way to see and do it without having to sign up first. So highly recommend you checking it out. And until next time, stay nerdy.